Well, we had one heck of a storm last night, and we have quite a few people here today with me to give you some information that we think is important and hopefully answer all of your questions. Thank you for all of you who are here, including some city council members, county board members. Appreciate you being here today. With me, I have today is Wendell Young from OPPD. He is the Director of Customer Service and Government Infrastructure. I also have Austin Rouser, who is Assistant Public Works Director for Transportation. He's going to talk a lot about traffic signals and other issues with public works. Jim Tyler is here. He's Assistant Public Works Director, talking about transportation, trash pickup, things like that. And then Matt Kalsovich is our Parks Director for the City of Omaha. I'm going to just hand it over to them, but before I do, I want to make it clear from the beginning this was a widespread city event. I think it looks like right now with our initial assessments, the worst hit, well, all Omaha was hit, but the worst is more central and west Omaha with this. But it looks like we have more damage and more outages with this storm in the history of Omaha. So this is going to be a step-by-step process. It's going to take a while to get everything cleaned up, and we hope people will understand and be patient with what we are planning on doing. I want to say also that we will have a citywide curbside debris pickup. This will be citywide, and Austin's going to go into a little more of the details in a few minutes. But we feel like of a storm with this magnitude and this much debris all over the city of Omaha, that we indeed do need a curbside pickup. And as far as the time goes, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But our first priority is getting the streets clear. We got to get the streets clear so that they're all passable, get the trees and limbs off the streets, and then move to the curbside pickup. So we'll talk about timing with that in just a second. So first I'm going to invite Wendell Young. I think he's the man of the hour here because there was a lot of power outages last night at the peak, about 216,000 outages, and Wendell is going to give us an update of where they are now with OPPD and also what OPPD is doing to increase the personnel that they have, boots on the ground out on the streets, to get this going as fast as they can. So Wendell?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Again, I'm Wendell Young with OPPD. I just want to give you an update on where we stand in our outage restoration efforts. As the mayor mentioned, we were over 200,000 out at the peak of the storm last night. We responded immediately, calling in crews and dispatching crews out to begin the restoration efforts. At this time, we were about 38% restored. That's nearly 80,000 customers that are back in service yet today. And we worked through the night, and we'll continue to do that up until about 9 or 10 o'clock p.m. tonight. Just to give you an idea of the number of crews that we have on site, we are already at over 150 crews working today. We will reach a total of around 330 or so by the end of tomorrow. That's kind of the equivalent of having about 1,000 boots on the ground. That includes line crews, construction crews, tree trimming crews, both within the Omaha area and through our mutual aid partners. We'll be making restorations to all of our system within the 13 county service area, including substation transmission repairs along with distribution, both on the main line and throughout the neighborhoods. Couple other things is if you are experiencing an outage, we want to remind everyone how to report to OPPD. We know there are challenges getting through the call center line at the height of the storm. Those services have been restored, but our main line number is 1-800-554-OPPD. Again, that is 1-800-554-6773. You can also report outages at OPPD Connect on our app at oppd.com/outage, and then look for updates on our outage and storm center as we continue through the duration of the event. This is the largest event we've had in history, exceeding the size of the outage we had back in July of 2021. So this could take some time. In 2021, the outage restoration timeline from start to finish was about 7 days. We anticipate something similar in the 7 to 8 day range for all those customers who have the most severe damage or in the nested areas of service. A couple other items I just want to report out on and just remind people about safety. Safety is the #1 priority for OPPD at this time as we go through the restoration effort. If you see a line that is down, assume it to be hot, stay clear and report it to OPPD. If it is in a public right-of-way or blocking a road, please call 911 so that we can have safety protocols deployed in those areas. And anything on private property, make sure that you're reporting those things to OPPD. We do have some mutual aid assistance programs that we'll provide updates on our website. We will have updates as soon as we get that information from some of our mutual aid partners. Again, we'll continue the restoration here for the next several days with an update of projected about 50% outage restoration by the end of the week. So there's a lot of effort going on right now. We'll continue to work diligently. We're working in all areas of our service territory, our 4 quadrants in the metro, along with our rural areas. With that, that's my update for today. If you have any other questions, we can answer those after the rest of the debrief.
I meant to mention that in the beginning. We'll have everyone speak and then we'll take your questions at the end. And I wanted to add, because Wendell said if you can't get a hold of OPPD by calling them, because their lines are pretty jammed up right now, he is recommending using their app. I'm going to do the same. People can call my hotline. It's 444-5555. Or use our mobile app. And that is, I have to stop and think about it, Mobile Omaha. And with the Mobile Omaha app, you can sign up for text alerts, emails, or both. And so we really do recommend, and that mobile app is just for us giving out information. It's not interactive. But we really want to make sure that people know how they can get a hold of us and how they could get updates too. So next, I want to introduce or bring Matt Kalsovich, our Parks Director, up, and he's going to talk about drop-off sites and other issues. So Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. At this time, we have 5 locations now open, dispersed around the city: Greenbrier Park, Hefflinger Park, Levi Carter Park, the field location at 156th and F near Lake Zorinsky, and Toll Park. Those will be open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily until informed otherwise. We just ask people to please be patient, as we could see long lines, especially at the beginning. These sites were selected, and some of them are traditional storm locations for us. Safety is a major factor in terms of allowing access or proper access to a space like that for this kind of effort, and certainly capacity to handle what we understand and what we have seen and believe is the quantity that we'll be dealing with. It took some time to mobilize these locations or teams at these locations, but that's now complete, and the majority of our parks resources are being allocated to the cleanup effort. More information or changes to the schedule or the availability of the sites will be posted on city website, as well as both the city and Parks and Rec social media.
Thanks, Matt. Now Austin Rouser, Assistant Public Works Director, he will make some comments.
Good morning. I'd like to start just by talking about what our crews have been working on since the storm happened last night. We've had people that were on call throughout the night, on call at all hours, making sure that we're coordinating closely with the police department, with OPPD, and making sure that roadways are clear to the best extent practicable. We want to make sure that all the roadways are safe. We want to make sure they're all passable, and so we've been working at all hours just to make sure that that happens. We will continue to work in that fashion. We are working with about 30 crews currently that are going through the streets. Our first priority is the passability of the streets. And so we will be working over the next several days just to make sure that all the streets in Omaha remain passable and open and safe for the public to use. We do anticipate, as the mayor mentioned, that at some point in time, likely at the start of next week, we will come through and do a curbside pickup for tree limbs that are down, but our first priority through the rest of this week and through the weekend will remain passability and openness of the streets. So we would ask that people just be cognizant of the fact that potentially Monday we could start coming out and picking up limbs at curbside, and so there's some time there for people to get those out to the curb and make sure that they're available for our crews to start picking up. We do anticipate that operation to take a significant amount of time. There's a very, very large amount of debris that's down. We're working through 5,000 lane miles of streets to make sure those are open and passable. We expect the pickup that starts early next week to last somewhere in the 2 to 3 week range, and so we would obviously ask that if people have the means, if citizens have the means and the ability to get limbs and trees to the dump sites that are open, we would certainly appreciate that happening. Otherwise, we will continue to process until everything's picked up over the next several weeks. One of the issues, obviously, that came up this morning, we've had a number of outages with our traffic signals. Traffic signals run on power, and so we're waiting for the full restoration of power. As of this morning, I know about 10% of our system was still completely black. The way that works is if we have a power outage at a signal, the signal will go dark. That should be treated as a four-way stop if there are no lights there. Once the power is restored to the signal will go into what's called flash mode, where you'll see either a red or a yellow flashing light. Again, those are treated as four-way stops to make sure that that people aren't having crashes in the intersections. At that point in time, once the power comes back, our crews come out to get those signals reset, get the timing reset on them, and so that can take a significant amount of time. We did have some signal poles that were also damaged, and so we have crews working on those. But we are looking to restore all of that functionality to the system as soon as possible, and work to make sure that our transportation system remains passable and safe.
All right, thanks, Austin. I do want to mention what Matt Kalsovich, when he was talking about the drop-off sites. These 5 drop-off sites were carefully picked, but mostly because of safety and capacity. We got to make sure that they have the capacity to get the debris in there, and we also have to make sure that there's easy ins and outs, because there will be a lot of people in their cars and in their trucks trying to drop off. So some have asked, well, why can't there be one in my neighborhood? And we really can't pick a small park or a small area for a drop-off site like this. So we feel like these will be sufficient now, but it's all about safety, and it's all about the capacity that we have for those drop-off points. So next, and not last but not least here, Jim Tyler, Assistant Public Works Director, is going to say a few words. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to talk about FCC and our garbage collections. Right now, the biggest delay to garbage collections are just going to be passability of the streets. So as those streets get cleared, the garbage trucks will follow behind them. That may lead to some delays. Okay, so residents whose trash is not collected on their normal day of collection are asked to leave their cart at the curb, and it will be picked up on the next day. If it's not picked up by 7 o'clock tonight, go ahead and call 402-444-5238 for missed collections. Wait till after 7 p.m. to call in, because it's going to be running a little bit later than normal. We do ask residents that it's okay to use your garbage carts for small tree debris, okay? And go ahead and fill up that 96-gallon cart with small tree debris. We do not want you to put the large diameter limbs in those garbage carts. They will not compact. They could potentially damage equipment and slow down the overall operations. So if we have any updates on overall garbage collection, we'll get those out in the future.
I'm going to go back to the drop-off sites for just a minute. What we really are encouraging people to do is, if you have the ability and the capacity that you can take debris to a drop-off site, if you are able to do it, we encourage you to do that. But there's a lot of people who can't, and so those people are what we're saying. We will have citywide curbside pickup, but we encourage the drop-off if you are able to do that. And we understand some people don't have the trucks or the ability to do that. But the street side, curbside pickup will probably not start till next week. But we think that that's okay, but it will, because it'll give people time to clean their yards and get the debris to the curbs too. But if you can take it to the drop-off site, we encourage you to do that. Another thing, I've been in contact with Cox all morning too, and a lot of people are saying their internet is down, even though their power is back on. And Cox has been busy. Obviously, they are working with OPPD to get the power restored, to get their services restored. But once the power is restored, doesn't necessarily mean your Cox internet will be back on board right away, because they do also have some damage to their infrastructure. So that may take a little while longer. So I just wanted to bring that update to you from Cox. So with that, I have a lot of folks here to answer your questions. So
Question for Austin.
fire away, Austin.
Usually when you put limbs out for the city to pick up, you have to have the 4-foot lengths and tie it up. Do you have to do that this time as well?
Yeah, so if, Jim was talking about potentially putting them in a trash can. If that goes through the yard waste service or the trash service, they need to be cut up. The street maintenance pickup that's going to come in, they don't require them to be cut up for that. We're going to have large, heavy equipment. We're going to have people with chainsaws. So we're moving that into large dump trucks and getting it out to our own dump sites. And so for what the public works crews come through on the street side, the transportation side, those don't have to be cut up really fine. But anything, again, as Jim mentioned, that goes into a trash can does have to be cut up 3-inch or less diameter and cut to short lengths.
Do you want, if there's a large 12-foot, tree branch, do you want them at least kind of cut up to make it easier for you guys?
That would be helpful. I mean, the more something's cut up before we get there, obviously the less work and the faster we can process that work. So that's certainly helpful. I understand there's limitations on means and ability for people to do that. So if you can, I would encourage it. If not, we'll come through and pick that up.
How many times are you going to pass through the neighborhoods to pick up the tree debris?
We plan to come through one time. And so, again, we're really early right now to get an assessment on what everything looks like as far as the volume of that debris is. And so, we'll stay flexible and we'll do what we need to do at the end of the day. The best operation for us is if we can systematically go through each one of our residential areas. And I would just want to highlight also, our maintenance crews are divided into 5 distinct district yards. They're all sized proportionally with the same number of streets, the same number of operators per street, and so we have equal distribution of forces citywide. And so what we'll do is we have what we call areas, and each one's about 25 lane miles. It's similar to how we do a snow operation. We'll systematically go one by one and clear those. It's a 2-staged operation or phased operation, where the first is making sure those streets are clear, making sure the streets are passable. We will track that internally with a web map. I think we're looking at potentially having that available to the public. We've got to do some more work on that. But once we're finished making sure that all the streets are clear and passable, we will come back with a pickup operation at the curbside. Again, we plan to track that internally with web maps. Hopefully we can share that with the public as well.
Can people in the neighborhoods help out by moving their cars if they can?
That's a good question. I think it all depends on location of the pile. Obviously, if you've got a car that's near a pile and a piece of equipment can't get to it, then sure. I mean, it's similar to keeping your car away from a fire hydrant. We need to have room to work. We need to have the ability to do that. So if people have the ability and the space to take their cars off of the streets, that's helpful.
Austin, how many streets, were completely closed by limbs across them, and how many are trees?
Yeah, I don't have that number.
More than the 2 I saw?
Yeah, I don't have that number. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, it's more than the 2.
Are there still some now?
Yes.
The mayor mentioned that West Omaha and Central Omaha were the most impacted. Where are you guys focusing your efforts for street accessibility right now?
We are divided into 5 distinct maintenance districts that all have their own responsibilities, and so our crews are spread evenly citywide.
You mentioned 30 crews. What is that for, boots on the ground?
Yeah, so some of those crews are equipment crews, and some of those are ground crews. So your ground crew is going to consist of people with loaders, skid steers, chainsaws. That's kind of our ground crews, and then our haul crews they're the people driving the dump trucks back and forth. So we've got the ground crews that do all the cut up and loading, and then the other crews that are hauling back and forth to the dump sites.
Do you have a number of employees that are out working?
It would be around 150.
For Dodge Street, when I came in, I came to the west side. There's almost 3 head-ons for that middle lane at 3rd. What's kind of the traffic flow with that during the day? Because without the traffic lights, there's no directional arrows.
Yeah, obviously the signals are really important to the proper operation. And for the reversible lane on Dodge, I would just encourage avoiding the center reversible lane.
I've heard a couple of times that people have said up here that this has got more damage than any storm in Omaha history. I'm old enough to remember 1975. Does that include the tornado that blew through the middle of Omaha in 1975, Convention 21?
We're talking about outages. We were talking about OPPD was talking about their outages.
Okay, just wanted to make
This is
sure.
more outages than that
The
they have
population
seen.
is also
Right,
big,
right.
too. Okay.
And I wanted to reemphasize what Austin said too, because this question comes up a lot. We are not giving preferential treatment to any part of Omaha. Public Works has 5 districts. They're equally distributed, and they are addressing each district equally. Nobody gets preferential treatment. And keep in mind too, we have 5,000 lane miles of road in Omaha. So our first priority is to get the streets clear, and that's going to take a little while. But I was down in South Omaha last evening when the storm hit, and I saw city trucks out already. The storm had just passed, and so they're out, they're working. Please be patient, because it was hit really badly citywide. Like I said, it looks like Central and West Omaha had the worst, but still everyone did. South Omaha, North Omaha, it was citywide. We got a direct hit.
As far as some of the trees on like some of the right-of-ways, like on Harrison, some of the trees that sit, I don't know if it's like on the property, but you have the fences that went in there. Is that the property owner's thing to try to clean up that, or is that the city on the north side of Harrison?
Yeah, so the city's responsibility in something like this is when a tree falls and it blocks, from a transportation standpoint, if you're blocking transportation, either a sidewalk or a street, we want to make sure that gets cleared. Right. So as far as the responsibility, the city code defines a number of responsibilities. We don't split hairs on that standpoint when we're out clearing for a storm. We want to make sure transportation is restored, and that's sidewalks and streets. And so we will come and clear those if they're blocking a transportation infrastructure.
But
Public right-of-way is our responsibility.
yeah, so they're not. So if the tree's on the other side of the fence, then all those trees are going to be, that's going to be your job to come back.
We won't go onto private property for trees, which is why we ask for curbside pickup, because we want the trees brought to the right of way. But our crews won't go onto private property. We won't trespass to pick up trees.
I have a question for Wendell. OPPD said at one point it's very difficult to provide accurate estimated restoration times. Can you explain why to customers?
Yeah, so each outage is a bit unique in its location and occurrence. So in this particular case, if I provide you with a global ETR, which is what I mentioned in the 7 to 8 days range, that is from the beginning of the outage situation, which started last night around 6 o'clock or so, through the last restoration of customers. That could be up to 7 or 8 days. Different customers have different restoration times depending on location, level of damage, impact to circuits, substations, and transmission in the area.
And then you talked about crews, mutual aid. Can you talk about where crews are coming from?
Yeah, let me pull that up for you. Currently we have Ellie Myers crews on site, MPPD, Loop Public Power, RS Electric, Grand Island Utilities, Collective Strategic Resources, and Nebraska Rural Electric Association. We also have tree trimming crews from Wright and Asplin, and additional mutual aid crews potentially coming from Mid-American, and then additional tree trimming crews, up to 40 additional crews coming in by tomorrow.
So, and this season we have seen higher frequency of storms with more strength. Is there anything OPPD is talking about as it relates to climate change?
So as it relates to climate change, we have a very robust sustainability program. We have of course a commitment to decarbonization. You've heard that through our Power in Future 2050 goals. You've seen our investments in wind over the years and our recent investments in solar power as well. As far as the climate change conversation, we'll continue to dialogue in that regard and how that impacts system. But from a global proactive measurement, we also have a pretty aggressive vegetation management program, and that helps mitigate some of these outage durations once storms do come into the area. Chris?
This is an unusual weather season, isn't it?
This is very unusual. The crews have been working very hard. Again, I should probably even mention that safety to our crews is just as important as safety to the public. Please give them the space and access to do their jobs. They're doing their level best to restore power as quickly as possible. But there are a lot of heroes out there right now working these outage restoration efforts.
So, Wendell, everyone should be back within 7 to 8 days?
That's our projection. That's our projection at this time, but we have damage assessment teams out looking and mobilizing on damage in the areas. I should probably have a better idea of what that restoration time looks like here in the coming days, and we'll report that on storm and outage.
And you know, I wanted to add to what Wendell said earlier, because I think this is important for people to understand. If it's a circuit, a big circuit, and they restore the power, they could restore power to what, 1,000 or more people. If it's a line down in somebody's backyard because of a tree falling down, when they fix those and restore power, it could be 2 or 3 houses. So that's when it goes much slower, when they got to get into these individual backyards for power lines down. And that's important to remember.
Read my mind.
Oh my goodness.
Wendell, so are there different types of customers that it's going to take longer to get to, like if a power line is down in your backyard, and if a power line is down in somebody's backyard, maybe somebody in this room, maybe somebody's relatives or people we interviewed last night, what should they do?
Well, the number one thing is always reporting the outages. So you may see a circuit come online and our customer outage numbers come down. But if you are still experiencing an outage, please report that at OPPD.com or on our 1-800 call center line. As far as tree debris goes, dense tree areas with overhead lines tend to have the longest duration of outage. Now, depending on the area, level of trimming, access to property, that can take more or less time. But if you kind of prescriptively describe it, those are some of the areas that we'll be looking at in our damage assessment today.
And if there's trees that have knocked out power in people's yards or to their own power lines or power lines, will OPPD do what it takes to get through those trees to hook up the power?
We'll do enough trimming to make the area safe to go in and restore power, replace poles and wires as necessary. Kind of to Austin's point, we will not remove down trees and debris in private property, only in those right-of-way areas where we absolutely need to do that. But we will trim enough to make the area safe and restore power.
For the downed power poles, do you guys have enough excess poles to replace those that are snapped, or is there any concern about getting?
We keep an adequate amount of safety stock, so we're fully supplied on poles, and we have access to other area utilities to help supplement when needed.
I wanted to follow up to Alex's question. You mentioned climate change and this being an unusual storm season. As that tends to continue, are you guys thinking about different infrastructure to keep the power grid, active during these times? We do. I would say we do a tremendous amount of work as far as it comes to having a more resilient system, a more reliable system. We do track our reliability statistics accordingly, and so we'll do some system hardening in that regard, and we'll continue to invest in that space.
Can you explain to people what happens when the power is pulled away from your house, when your lines are away from the house? That's not your deal.
Right, exactly. So in those cases, we're talking about the mast connection to the home, where OPPD brings the service wire to the home, attaches to the mast, and then the mast is then what brings power down to your meter socket. The replacement or repair of the mast where you receive power from OPPD is the responsibility of the homeowner, and you'll have to work with your local electricians and permitting authorities to get that repaired for power to be restored. Great question.
What was the most damage you guys have seen so far?
It's typically been broken poles, trees that are pulling down lines and snapping pole line, whether it be on transmission level outages or at distribution. That's generally the issue. This was a unique storm, so we did have some wind-related outage as well. So really it comes down to pole down, line down, tree on property, that kind of thing.
So following up on John's question, should if people did have that power mast or whatever that broke off their house,
sure,
or that appears to be damaged, should they call an electrician and try to get in line to get somebody to fix that, because OPPD won't be able to do that yourself?
That's correct. You'll need to call the electrician right away. If you've seen that pole detached from the home or there's damage to the meter socket, that's a responsibility of the homeowner to call the electrician. You should do that right away.
I have a couple questions for Austin still. How does the storm cleanup this time around compare to the other storms that we've had this year?
The other ones are more isolated, and so this is more of a citywide, widespread event. And so, I guess from that standpoint, you know, we're basically asking everything of all of our resources all at once. And so we're dispersing through the entire city, and we're systematically working through it. Where the other ones are more isolated, and we could send resources to an area or kind of focus on a specific area. That's the primary difference.
Gotcha. And then do you have a timeline? I know like OPPD said maybe 7 to 8 days based off the past. Do you have a timeline?
Yeah, and this is obviously going to be a little bit dynamic, but currently we think that the operation, the first phase where we go through and clear out all the streets, is probably going to take us to the first part of next week. When we go to do the curbside pickup, we expect that should probably take about 2 to 3 weeks.
Will each of the neighborhoods know when, you know, hey, we're going to be in your neighborhood by this day? Will they know, or is that something that you guys will?
We don't have any kind of a schedule for that. What we'll do is we'll disperse those crews, and they, you know, it's kind of going to be at the the discretion of the operators to go and find those areas. We'll assign those out obviously through our supervisory staff, and we're going to track those internally on a web map. Again, we don't do any kind of preferential treatment towards one or another. It's fairly random, but I would again just emphasize that for the curbside pickup, the best option that homeowners would have is to make sure that that's ready by Monday, so that when we do start that operation, it's out there and you don't get missed.
Did you say contractors are helping crews as well?
From our standpoint, I don't have any contractors. I know OPPD has some other contract help that's in, but from a public works standpoint, we don't have contractors at this time.
Mayor, so what have you heard about any injuries or deaths, or what kind of emergencies have the city's emergencies?
Right, we don't have any reported deaths, that's for sure, and not of any injuries that I know that are just related to the storm. So I have not heard of any yet, and I've talked to the fire chief last night. So, you know, it's pretty amazing when we had the tornado, and we had which has been upgraded, I know you've seen this, to an F4, and we had 2 minor injuries and no deaths, and with this storm also. No deaths, and of what I know, no injuries. So that is pretty amazing.
And the early warning systems.
The early warning systems, absolutely.
A lot of trees came through roots last night, but so far
we haven't. No, we haven't heard any. And once again, about the early warning system, I gotta give a lot of kudos to the news media, because what they were on the air all the time, letting people know what was going on. I know I heard the sirens go off, but just that continuous updating of the news media and early warnings, that was really great. And I will say that they've saved lives because of what they've done.
in Austin, has your staff been safe? I mean, that's a lot of workers out there with a lot of big tree debris.
Yeah,
traffic.
Our staff has been safe. We have good work zone practices for traffic. Obviously, you know, we're going to be using a lot of chainsaws over the next few weeks, and so that's something we want to make sure everybody's really safe at as well. Those injuries can be fairly severe, so we want to make sure that everybody's staying safe. Hydration's huge for our crews. There's a number of different issues that we're going to be facing with heat and just debris and trees and traffic. So we, you know, obviously that's what we do every day, and so to this point, everyone has stayed safe.
Mayor, are you aware of any 911 issues at all? Our newsroom got an email or two about that yesterday.
I just had contacted the chief last night, Chief Schmatter, and he said at one time last evening that they had received over 200 calls, and they were kind of getting stacked up at 911. But of you know, just reporting trees down, other things, but no injuries related to the storm. So yeah, they were getting a lot of calls into 911, and he said at one point there was over 200.
So that's been resolved. It was just a call volume.
Right. Yes. Other questions?
What do you think about just these powerful storms that have come through the past couple?
Well, you know, they say you can't fight Mother Nature because she'll always win, and I think that's the truth. You know, you prepare for the worst, hope for the best. We have good people, like all of these folks standing behind me that have plans. They've had people out on the streets immediately. I was amazed at when we had the tornado on Arbor Day. Omaha Fire Department was out there checking homes before the storm was over. And so I think everybody is zeroed in on getting the streets clean, being safe, getting people back, their power restored as soon as possible. But this is a big, big, big event. And like I said, citywide, we were hit really, really hard with it. And although our assessment shows certain areas are hit harder than others, you can't say that any area of Omaha wasn't affected. And so it's going to take a while to clean everything up. And we just hope people are patient with us, with our efforts. Again, with my Facebook and my web page, we're going to do updates as often as we possibly can to let people know what's going on about power restoration. OPPD will have a lot on their outage map. So we want to get as much information out as we can every day and give people updates as soon as we can. I know, I'll just mention, I don't have any immediate plans I can announce, but I am certain that we will get calls for people without power for an extended period of time in this heat. And if there's any option for those people, like cooling areas, cooling stations, I think those things are all things that we're going to have to now consider in the near future. So I know there's a lot of elderly that may be without power, not able to get themselves out to any other homes or family, and so that's all a concern to us until the power gets back on, because it's hot out right now. Any other questions?
Were any of the cooling centers affected by the power outages that you know of?
Well, we don't have any set up at this point.
Maybe the Red Cross or Salvation Army.
Yeah, Red Cross or Salvation Army, but I know there has been, consideration of community centers that the city does own and control in the future. So that I can't give you any answer. It'll just depend on what the need is out there, and we could react quickly. Other questions for me or anybody up here? Okay, stay tuned. We'll keep you informed as things progress and move forward, and hopefully everybody is safe and will get their power back soon. So thank you all. Thanks.